Thank you all so much. I have the honor and pleasure, yes? Am I introducing the man himself? Is that correct? I have the honor and pleasure of introducing one of my closest and best friends and the instigator, the creator, the voice of United Independence and the INC, Mr. Christopher Life. Give it up, everybody.
That was awesome, brother. Love you, that was epic. Woo. One more round of applause for Deepak and Johnny Twilight. That was amazing. That was amazing. Whew. All right. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Great. Welcome to INC 24 Denver. We're so happy to have you. My name's Christopher Life, and 4 years ago, we had a vision to create an event to juxtapose the Republican and Democrat national conventions. We called it the Independent National Convention. We held it in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we had about 250 wonderful people come together. That catalyzed something. That catalyzed a realization that we need to start to pull the U.S. independent sector out of the silos, out of all the different fragmentations, right? We have all these different independent parties, Libertarian Party, Forward Party, Green Party, and so many others. We have all these different people working on reform. We have people working on depolarization. We have people working on bridging the left and the right. And we thought, what we don't have is a unified context for this growing U.S. independent sector to be able to start coming together. And when we come together as events, what happens? We meet each other. We learn from each other. We start to be able to coalesce a shared vision, a shared sense of aspiration. We start to identify where our common ground is. And we start to be able to realize what's possible to work together, to create together. So this event is not just here to entertain you or even just to educate you, although I hope both of those things occur. It's here for us to be assembling, for us to build those relationships that are practical, substantive, and functional. So the organizations can start to build relationships. So the individuals who didn't have a political home can start to realize that there's a center of gravity that they can start to be a part of, right? We as a country and we as a humanity are at a choice point, right? Do you feel that? You kind of look out into the future and you ask the question, which direction is this whole thing going? I think that we can make a big case that, ooh, it's really concerning. We also can see a lot of positive things. And are we going towards dystopia? Are we going towards utopia? Are we going somewhere in the middle, right? And I believe that we are here in our generation, but also here in this room right now to make that choice. There's no one else that's going to decide the direction of our nation or the direction of humanity for us. We need to realize that we are the creators. And that, as Farah mentioned earlier, that we are the future ancestors. Right? 250 years ago, the colonies and the founders of this country, they had a vision. We could be independent from Britain. We could create our own government. It's a pretty big vision. They spent about 10 years socializing that, and Sam Adams got on his horse and rode around all these taverns and drank beer with people and gave them this idea. It didn't just happen all by itself. It was a true and authentic movement that actually led to the formation of the Continental Convention and ultimately the ability to declare independence, create a continental army, and assert that independence through a revolutionary war. So the founders of this country realized that there's nothing that they couldn't create. But they had to go all in. They had to put it all on the line. Right? They didn't do that and stay comfortable. They didn't do that and stay safe. Right? They realized that that vision that they had to create a new version of reality that they then wanted to inhabit and pass on to their children required them to go all in. And so in this moment, I feel like we're at that same choice point, that we have the ability, if we choose to be the founders of what happens next. And I promise you, I am not here just to talk. I am not here just so we circulate ideas and then I'll go back home. I'm here because I'm really serious. I'm really serious about getting this job done. And I believe that what's going to get the job done of creating fundamental political transformation in this country is going to happen when we start to move the control of our public institutions away from the main parties and the corporate special interests that they serve. Because our government has been captured by a series of interests that are more interested in profit than in the well-being of people and planet. And that's a problem. That's a really big problem. So we need to say, okay, I hear that you align with that problem from that applause, what do we do about it? And I'll tell you what we do about it. We start to move that stewardship of the public institutions away from the corporatocracy and the duopoly and back into the hands of the people. What does that mean, to move the power back into the hands of the people? Is that a trite concept? Is that a hollow concept? No. When we elect independent American citizen stewards to steward our public institutions, we move the power back in the hands of the people. Every single time independents win, it's like a miniature revolution that's successful. And the control of any previous legacy systems of power are no longer able to hold and manage the budgets and the policies and the decisions that happen in those institutions, and it brings it back to the people. So right now we have a trickling of independents, right? We have a couple independents in Congress. We have a couple independents that are stewarding in different areas, but what if we had 20%, 30%, 40% of governors and Congress as independents, right? 30 years ago, we had about 25% of Americans identify as independent, right? Then it went up to 30%, 35%, 40%, 45%. This year we hit 50%, and last month we hit 51%. So think about that for a second. 51% of Americans, that's over 100 million people, 100 million adults, say, I'm not aligned with the Republican-Democrat thing anymore. I want to go independent from that, right? You resonate with that, that's where you're in the room, yeah, correct? So 100 million people is an enormous voting bloc that can put anyone into office. If what? If organized, if coordinated, if aligned. So that's what we have the opportunity to do here at the Independent National Convention, to start the process of asking the question, how do we do that coordination? How do we do that movement building? How do we build that narrative? How do we enroll our brothers and sisters from around the country to come out of the shadows of apathy and back into activity because we have a context to do it in that actually inspires us? And that is the United Independent Movement. The United Independent Movement is an opportunity for all of these different organizations, groups, factions, and networks to have a national context of unification and coordination so we can achieve that critical objective of placing independent American citizen stewards in public institutions across the country, up and down the ballot. Does that sound like a good idea to you guys? Great. And it doesn't stop at getting people elected. You see that? It doesn't stop there. That's just where it starts. Because it's not just about putting new people in office, because what can be done can be undone, right? There's an election cycle every so often. So yes, we need to develop a core competence of getting more votes to win more and more independent elections. But while we're moving into office, this movement needs to develop the capacities to reform government, to change the policies, to change the cultural norms and standards, and to change the very technology that runs our government. What would happen if we made government hyper-transparent? Right? What would happen if every elected official was in a fishbowl and every communication and every decision, every interaction was recorded and streaming and stored on an immutable ledger forever? Right? What would happen about that? If you had an intention to get into office to be able to just make sure you can get your brother the bridge contract for the next government construction contract, and now all of a sudden you're stepping into this fishbowl. You might think twice about stepping into office. Right? So the greater degree of transparency has a direct effect of dissuading bad actors and inviting good actors to be able to steward our public institutions. Does that make sense? We can do that. What if on top of that hyper-transparency, we had firm accountability? Right? What if we applied the same amount of surveillance that's applied from the government onto the American people onto elected officials? Right? What if we said, look, the trust has been broken between government and people. And the only way that we can restore that trust is with a high degree of accountability. So only the people, the American citizens who are willing to be susceptible to the highest degree of accountability are the ones that we're going to vote for. Does that make sense? And the last piece that we need is empowered citizen participation. Right? There's been something that's been happening over the last couple hundred years where government's been made something that we want to be less and less and less involved with, because it just kind of feels toxic and kind of gross and a little bit complicated and not very inviting, right? So we need to make a national priority for civic education, right? Do that civic education like pulled out of the schools and all kinds of crap? Make a national priority to educate and engage and create whole new apparatuses of engagement. You guys heard about citizen assemblies, right? We have the ability to create a fourth branch of government. You all know about executive, legislative, and judicial. But what about the people? Right? What if we had a fourth branch of government? There was a formal structure called citizen assemblies where we organized officially to be able to ideate, to be able to sense make, to be able to hold our elected officials accountable, to be able to be directly involved with budget allocations and policy determination. Right? Every citizen assembly could be a proportional demographic representation of that respective city, county, state, and the nation at large. We can create formal conduits for the people to play a direct and active role in government, not because they show up to vote every 2 years, but because they're actively and directly involved. Okay? So for the next 2 days, when you hear the term the United Independent Movement referenced, you now know what that means. You got it? We're electing independent citizen stewards into government, and we're making government transparent, accountable, and participatory. And if that aligns with you, if that inspires you, then you're a part of the United Independent Movement. So I want to take a moment to just thank all of you for coming. Thank you for those who traveled from around the country and from around the world. I want to thank our team, to put on an event like this. Whew! Big round of applause for everybody who's worked on this, right? We'll do more of that at the end, but I just want to do like a front-end thank you. We've had team members that have been working around the clock for many weeks and many months to be able to make this happen. So thank you to everyone. And I also want to thank our sponsors. So we've got some wonderful sponsors who have shown up, who have helped to make this possible. The largest and primary sponsor we've had is Personal Family Lawyer with Alley Katz. I want to give a big round of applause and thank you for PFL. I highly encourage you to talk to them at their booth if you haven't yet. I want to thank American Values. Please give a round of applause for American Values. Thank you. We have Forward Party. We have Verity Medals. We have Human Universal Health Institute. And we have Electify. For all of them, please. Thank you. So I'm so excited for the rest of this general session, and I'm going to come back at the end to make a couple more points. I hope you guys are okay with that. And we have Zach Bush. You guys know Zach Bush? It's amazing. Like, when he spoke at INC 23, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, that's like the most profound thing I think I've ever heard anybody say, and I have a feeling he's going to be able to bring something really special for us today. We also have Lindsay Drath, the CEO of Forward Party. We're so grateful to have Forward Party joining us. We have Theo Wilson, and we have Del Bigtree. Do you guys know Del Bigtree? Yeah, Del Bigtree's coming down the pipeline. And then, like I said, I'll be back at the end. But what's going to happen next is we're going to have Jackie Salet and John Opdyke come up. Okay, if you don't know who Jackie Salet is, she was the founder and president of independentvoting.org, which to me, as far as I know, is like the original brand to help to be able to build the independent narrative in this country. So for like 20 or 30 years, they've been building this brand and this narrative and helping to be able to bring independents together. She's gone on to become one of the national board members of Forward Party, and she also leads the Department of Independent Politics at Arizona State University, right? So the university is starting to realize we need to be studying what's happening in the independent sector because something's really coming online that's going to change the country. So I want to really honor Jackie for that. And John has been fighting this good fight for decades, and he is the president of Open Primaries. And they're going to come up, and they're going to tell you a little bit about how we got here, what the independent sector and independent movement is all about, where we're at, and I hope they share some of their vision of where they think we can go. Thank you very much. Welcome to INC 24. Welcome to the Independent National Convention. Let's have a wonderful couple days. Rock and roll.